Trepang2. This game is probably the most balls to the wall shooter I think I've ever played, and also pretty much the living proof that sometimes good gunplay is all a game needs to provide you with a godlike feeling of power. I still remember playing the demo and how hyped it got me, and now that it's finally out, I'm here to tell you if the game is worth your time. And yeah, I know what you're thinking right now. Trepang? What the hell does that even mean? And what about Trepang2? Well, don't worry my friend, cause I'm here to help. Trepang is the Indonesian word for sea cucumber, and it's also the name of a 2D side-scrolling game in which you play as one of these little Kevins.
Hi, Kevin. Hi.
So yeah, if you like that game, then yeah, I've got some bad news for you, cause Trepang2 is nothing like that. But if you're also into games like Fear, Max Payne, or I don't know, maybe even Mortal Kombat, then you might want to stick around and see what this little pickle has to offer. So let's slide right into it. As you can tell by the footage you are seeing right now, this is not exactly the kind of game your conservative grandparents would approve of. To be honest, this is probably the most violent shooter I think I've ever played, and I've already played all the modern Doom games. Every weapon in this game makes you feel like you're unleashing absolute carnage onto your enemies, and boy do I not feel bad about it, cause wiping out hundreds of potential family fathers has never been this much fun. The graphics look really nice and offer up a lot of particle effects to further emphasize on your destruction, and the hit detection is very on point. And all of that is supported by some very hard-hitting metal tracks. If you hit an enemy with either a bullet or a melee attack, you will recognize it. Enemies will stumble when getting hit, and they will also splatter blood all over the place. Yeah dude, these guys must have like the highest blood pressure in the world, because when killed they often get blown into tiny bloody bits, as if they are air balloons filled with strawberry jam or something. It's Quentin Tarantino's wet dream. And yeah, all of these aspects combined will provide you with a serious power boner that will last all the way from And yeah, all of these aspects combined will provide you with a serious power boner that will last from the beginning all the way to the end. Those of you who like themselves some bullet time in their shooters have probably already realized that this game seems like a straight up love letter to Fear.
Which it is.
And honestly, I think it does a fairly decent job with that. Just like in that game, you play as a super soldier who fights against an evil corporation. And also just like in Fear, you will do that in mostly dark places that have the kind of atmosphere that would make you shit your pants if you wouldn't feel like such a badass the entire time. You are not afraid of your enemies, but your enemies are afraid of you. They will shout out orders during combat and will sound more and more insecure with every single kill you get. Because again, just like in Fear, you will fight squads of enemies that are looking for you, and it's up to you when you want to engage in combat. The main advantage you have over your enemies is that you can activate a so-called focus mode that will slow down everything around you while making you faster. So you can take your sweet time to aim for your enemy's head while they haven't even pulled the trigger yet. And that shit is satisfying as hell. That does not mean that Trepang brings nothing new to the table though. Because different to Fear, where your focus recharges over time, you recharge your focus by killing enemies, which keeps you motivated to play as aggressive as possible. Oh, and besides your focus ability, you also have a cloak! Yeah! This thing is actually a very nice addition to the gameplay, because it allows you to turn invisible for a short amount of time. It recharges over time and it is a very useful tool to break line of sight and to sneak up on enemies to grab them. Which is also a new mechanic that I really like. If enemies have their back turned towards you, you can take them hostage and use them as a meat shield. Cause let me tell you, your enemies are absolute sociopaths who won't negotiate with anyone or hesitate to shoot their friends. If you hold someone hostage, enemies will still fire right at you without a second of hesitation. I mean, damn, these guys don't fuck around. After your hostages have overstayed their welcome, you can execute them by snapping their necks, throw them at their friends like the piece of trash they are, or, my personal favorite, pull a pin on one of their grenades and then throw them at their friends to blow them up. Yeah, I did that quite often. Because it's a free grenade and it looks absolutely hilarious. You can also ignite one of their grenades and just throw them into the air and watch them explode like a blood-soaked firework. But the coolest mechanic by far is the sliding feature. Cause if you slide into enemies, you will catapult them in the air like there's no gravity. And you can shoot them mid-flight as if you're playing a game of skeet shooting. This might look really broken, but believe me, it's 100% intentional and by design. Because there are guys with riot shields who can only be damaged if you slide into them so they can't hold up their shield anymore. You can even slide into someone and then grab them out of mid-air, which I didn't do that often, but hey, it's there if you want to use it. I first didn't like that there is a stamina bar, but now I actually think it balances the combat out a fair bit. And it also encourages an aggressive playstyle, because kills actually also recharge your stamina bar. Over the last couple of minutes you may have realized that this game has a very strong focus on combat, which is fine. But if a game is all about killing enemies, you at least want to have a variety of ways to do so, and thankfully Trepang does not let you down in that regard. You might not have the biggest arsenal at your disposal, but believe me, this is a game that takes quality over quantity. Every weapon in this game is useful and satisfying to use. I mean, listen to this, it's like ASMR with guns. You can use pistols, SMGs, assault rifles, shotguns and even a goddamn grenade launcher. And all of these can even be dual-wielded, by the way. The first weapon you will use is the pistol. And it is pretty accurate and does very decent damage, as long as you're going for headshots. And when dual-wielded, it becomes so good that you can actually use it throughout the entire game. The next weapon you will find is the SMG, which is based on a Chris Vector. And this thing is a hard-hitting, fast-firing little tool of death. It is not that accurate, but for close to mid-range encounters, you can always count on it. Then we also have an assault rifle, which kinda looks like a G36. It is slightly more accurate than the SMG, but also has a slower rate of fire. I also feel like it does a bit more damage, but in the end I kind of prefer the SMG. It just turns me on a little bit more, you know. The assault rifle is still a damn fine weapon though, and if you prefer it to the SMG, I won't judge you. But now we will get to the real bread and butter of the game. The one weapon to outclass them all. The Terry Crews of guns.
Old Spice body spray makes you smell like power!
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is my boomstick!
the shotgun in this game is nothing but one of my favorite shotguns of all time. Just like the shotgun in Fear, this thing is based on a Spaz 12, and just like in Fear, this thing is packing some serious heat. It has the nasty habit of absolutely obliterating enemies and blowing them into bloody chunks when hit at close range, to a point that you can even see your enemy's intestines splattered on the ground. I mean, damn! No enemy besides the heavy armored dudes will survive more than 2 hits from this thing, and you will only need that follow-up shot if you didn't hit the first one right on, which I manage to do quite often.
Shit!
Oh, and if you do wield this thing, oh man, you will make every single motherfucker in the room wish he'd stayed at home that day. I also love how your character cocks each one of these things with one hand while sliding and jumping all over the place. This guy is a master at multitasking, let me tell ya. And in case you run out of ammo while standing right in front of a bad guy, you can always just punch them or jump at them and use them as a launching pad by drop kicking them right in the face. There is also a 2 weapon limit, but to me it was a situation of being able to carry the shotgun and 1 extra weapon. And I gotta say, if you don't carry the shotgun with you the vast majority of the time, you're playing the game wrong. When it comes to the heavier weapons, there is a sniper rifle, which is one of the very few weapons you can aim down the sights with. Most weapons only have hipfire, because the game wants you to play up close and personal. Yeah, this is not the kind of game where you just stay back and take pot shots at enemies like you're grinding long shots in Call of Duty. It has a slower firing rate, but it hits hard. I mean, it's a sniper rifle. What did you expect?
I don't know.
There is also a minigun, which sounds cool, but is really more of a letdown, to be honest. It takes forever to reload, and it also has an insanely slow wind-up time, which really makes this thing feel like a bit of a handicap. But in certain situations this gun can really give you that sweet, sweet dopamine. And I am the last guy who complains about mowing down a battalion of bad guys without releasing the trigger once. Next up we have the bolt launcher, which is a really fun weapon. It can nail enemies to walls and it viciously impales them, which looks really mean. But if that is not your cup of tea, you can turn it into a grenade launcher, which launches 3 grenades at once. These will first stick to enemies and then blow up to put them out of their misery, which is very effective against armored enemies. There is also a regular grenade launcher, and this thing is a drum-fed war crime. You aim somewhere, you shoot, and then you watch everything die that is located at the spot you just aimed for. It's as simple as that. Other than the minigun and the bolt launcher, this thing can actually be wielded, which makes you feel like death himself.
Groovy.
All weapons can also be modified at workbenches you can find throughout the missions. The weapon mods need to be unlocked by finding little briefcases that are actually not that hard to find. These let you put sights onto the assault rifle, you can put lasers on a lot of guns, you can turn the minigun into a smart gun which fires homing shots, and many more. There are also incendiary rounds for the shotgun, which actually do nothing besides looking kind of cool. Almost all weapons can also be equipped with silencers, in case you want to try to stealth. But this is really hard, because the enemies move fast and you get detected very easily. I honestly never felt drawn to play this way, because to me trying to stealth through a game like this is like going to a steakhouse to eat a salad.
Don't let him out of your short! Throwing a grenade!
When it comes to throwables, Trepang2 plays it very safe. Of course there are regular frag grenades, which do their job not only good, but better. They cannot be cooked, but they will explode as soon as they touch an enemy, or if you shoot them with your gun. The radius of them is fairly high, and the gorgeous explosion effect combined with the game's gore system lets you blow up an entire squad of enemies into shreds. But you need to use them wisely, because the enemies in this game are pretty good at dodging grenades. You also have flashbangs, but I didn't really use them that much. They are basically just handy for distracting enemies so you can grab them. There are proximity mines, which you should just throw at enemies, to be honest. If you place them on the floor, enemies will see them and avoid them. I personally use them more as a defensive method to cut off access points to my position, which is actually how proximity mines are supposed to be used. You can also use firebombs, which do exactly what you expect. So yeah, if you feel really sadistic, they are worth to fool around with, but otherwise I would stick to the frag grenades. And finally there are tomahawks. Yes, tomahawks, which let you unleash your inner Viking. These things will make enemies fly away when hit, which looks pretty funny. I didn't use them a hell of a lot, but every time I used them, they filled my life with joy. So yeah, a welcome addition to your arsenal of throwables. Every game has its flaws, and the story is this game's biggest flaw, to be honest. It has a lot of plot holes and is really poorly presented, which makes it very forgettable. You play as a super soldier, simply referred to as Subject 106, who is a prisoner in some kind of scientific facility run by the Horizon Company. After he manages to break free and eradicate the entire personnel of the facility, he gets rescued by the Task Force 27, who are mostly referred to as the Syndicate. Now you are working alongside the Syndicate, and it's your job to clear out Horizon facilities scattered around the globe, which were taken over by their own test subjects and therefore contain significant evidence to destroy the company. Yeah, that does not sound familiar at all, does it? Oh, and there is also a cult you have to fight, because why the hell not? If I'm being honest, I have absolutely no idea how this cult is related to the story. They keep talking about a cycle that needs to be broken and they are connected to the Horizon Company in some sort of way. But that is really all I remember. I am also not really convinced that Horizon is a bad company. You are told the entire time that they need to be stopped, but I would have appreciated a better reasoning than the fact that they are experimenting with unknown forces. You know, make them do experiments on children, let them sell their experiments as weapons of mass destruction, or make them waste billions of dollars to build a submarine controlled by a third-party controller if you want me to believe that they are evil. There is one bit where you learn that Horizon are euthanizing people for their experiments, but it seems like these people are doing it consensually, so yeah, I don't care.
It took a lot of guts for you volunteers to sign up here, and for that, you have my gratitude. Countless lives will be saved because of your selflessness.
In fact, if I really think about it, I almost feel like I'm actually playing as the bad guy in some way, and maybe that was even the intention of the developers. Because yeah, it turns out that the cause of Horizon's failed experiments were due to cloned soldiers from the Task Force 27 going rogue, which leads to the Task Force betraying you and wanting to get rid of you.
You're our most valuable asset, Lucius. You served the Syndicate well. It's time for you to retire now.
But of course you manage to overpower them, kill your successor called Subject 107 in a final boss fight and destroy the Task Force for good. The delivery of all this feels incredibly rushed to me and it leaves a lot of open questions. The story is also mostly presented over text samples you can find, radio calls and occasionally smaller cutscenes, which are really lacking any kind of staying power. It also doesn't help that every character in this game is wearing a mask, which really puts the final nail in the coffin of their personality. I honestly cannot point out one rememberable character, and I get it. Animating faces is very time consuming and a hard thing to pull off, especially when you consider that this is a game made by only 4 people. But if you do not have the resources to tell a good story, then why bothering to do so in the first place? Stick to your strengths, Trepang2, and storytelling is not one of them. I recently read a blog post by one of the developers who said that the storytelling would be very subtle by design and would ask a lot from the player to fill in the blanks, and yeah, it's true. I just did not really want to invest myself into the story, because to me the story was just a speed bump that distracted me from shooting stuff. I really would not mind if this game handled it like the game Severed Steel, which is basically just a collage of levels for the player to shoot through, with occasional small interruptions in form of freeze-frame pictures to tell the story. Great game by the way, I really recommend it. But yeah, I still have a good amount of respect for Trepang Studios for still trying to provide the player with some lore, and I have actually heard of people who are satisfied with the story. but for an unintellectual lazy bastard like me, it just didn't quite hit the mark. The campaign consists of 5 story missions and about 6 side missions, which will take you about 4 to 5 hours in total to play through. The first mission, where you escape from the research facility, is very promising. I really like the beginning, where you are handcuffed and have to run away and hide from everybody until you finally get rid of the cuffs, find a gun and gain the ability to fight back. At the end of this mission there is a small arena where enemies come in hordes through the elevator doors, and this is a great way to end the mission. The formula of these missions becomes predictable very fast though. About 70% of the missions takes place in interior office areas, where you run from one room to the next, encounter enemies, kill them, and at the end of the mission you will fight some kind of boss most of the time. The first mission also introduces heavy armored enemies, who have a gas tank on their back, for whatever reason. I mean, it's not like they are using flamethrowers. Why the hell is that tank there? It is as if they wanted to give their enemies a fair chance, because if you blow up this tank, the majority of their armor breaks, and a few shotgun rounds after that, they will end up as bloody chunks just like their friends. The second mission, for example, starts off pretty normal and looks pretty run of the middle, but towards the end you will encounter these weird mutant looking dudes and this deathbed demon that could be straight out of a Doom game. The boss fight against it is pretty lame though, but it can also be done fairly quickly if you know what you're doing, which is the case for most of the boss fights in this game. There is also this mission where you fight cultists in a cathedral, which is a nice change of environment and almost looks like from an entirely different game. You will even encounter kamikaze cultists who take 2 firebombs, run right up to you and fucking explode. This and one other side mission are thankfully the only times where you will encounter these guys, because kamikaze enemies fucking suck. Oh, and their cries of agony when burning alive really reminded me of the cultists you fight in the game Blood. This is also the mission where you unlock the ability to dual wield by injection, which is pretty dumb, but they probably gatekept this mechanic to balance out the game. Because if you could dual wield from the get-go, you would steamroll through the first couple of missions. The last boss fight is basically just a horde mode, where you also have to destroy these brains in a jar under a time limit, which is pretty straightforward, but after that you will fight Subject 107. This guy can cloak and move super fast, just like you know, just to give you a little taste of your own medicine. This is quite a different boss fight to be honest, because this guy has a goddamn katana, and he has a lot of fast and heavy hitting attacks that you need to dodge with a slide move at the right time. When it comes to the side missions, there really is not that much to say. They are just a standard horde mode for the most part, where you find yourself in an area where you have to hack a few terminals, while enemies spawn in. Some of the enemies will interrupt the hacking process, which you will need to prioritize, because with each wave the enemies will become more difficult. Sometimes you also just have to survive a certain amount of waves to successfully complete the mission. I, for example, really like this crash site mission, where you frequently have to take cover to avoid airstrikes, where you even take on enemy snipers. This is one of the very few times where the sniper rifle becomes very useful. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun weapon to fool around with, but you never really have to use it due to the close quarter nature of the combat. The game also tries to dip its toes into horror from time to time, but it does not succeed at all with it. A good example for this is this one mission where you investigate this abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. It starts off with a fairly decent atmosphere as you find a hidden trapdoor under this house and slowly follow the path to the secret laboratory. But then you encounter these ghosts, who look like giant fireballs, and you have to defeat them by shutting down a few terminals. And if that sounds boring and uninspired to you, it's because it is. After you exit the secret lab, a few enemies spawn in and you have a little closing shootout, as if the game was apologizing to you for wasting your time and holding you back from killing things. For me, an effective horror atmosphere needs to give you a feeling of danger and inferiority to make you feel scared. But if you are constantly bullying everything that tries to harm you, it is very difficult for me to feel scared. The horror in this game is creating a haunting atmosphere with no payoff at all at the best of times. But hey, it's nothing game breaking. In between missions you get access to this hub area, where you can pick your next mission, customize your weapons and your appearance, try out guns at the shooting range, and you can access the combat simulator. This is a horde mode, where you earn money by making kills, and you can spend that money at supply chests to buy yourself some better weapons and equipment. This is also a mechanic in a lot of the side missions as well. It has a huge selection of maps, which are mostly taken right out of the campaign, but I think that's a good thing. You can always pick one of your favorite combat arenas and fool around with the game's mechanics and see how insane the combat can really get. It is a really nice little side activity that is very inviting to some nice and short casual fun on the side. It is also a good opportunity to experiment with the game's cheats. Yeah, in true old school fashion, this game has a bunch of cheats for you to unlock, which range from even more gore, more ragdolls and T-posing enemies, to stuff like infinite focus, infinite stamina, enemies only dying from headshots, and many more. To unlock these, you have to beat a certain level at a certain difficulty. There are 6 different difficulty modes: easy, normal, hard, very hard, extreme and rage mode. I always like it when I have a huge variety of difficulty modes to choose from, because it ensures that everyone can have a good time, no matter the skill level. I first beat the game on hard mode, which was a fair challenge. I never felt like enemies could take too much damage or that I could take too less. On normal mode the game is very easy and really boosts your confidence, but on extreme mode the fun is over. I beat one mission on extreme to unlock the insane gore cheat, and that was not easy, believe me. On extreme, no matter if you have full health, full armor or even both, you won't survive more than 3 or 4 direct hits, and this is a huge problem when dealing with lots of enemies with automatic weapons. Oh, and if your enemies have shotguns, you better get the fuck out of wherever you are right now, because they will tear you a new asshole faster than you can say oops. So what are my final thoughts on Trepang2? Well, I really love the gunplay and the movement mechanics, the presentation and effects are absolutely gorgeous, and with a time of 4 to 5 hours for a playthrough, it is very well paced and doesn't overstay its welcome. Right when it starts to get boring, you are done. The story and the horror elements are poorly executed, and in some places I think the game could use a bit more variety. But in the end, Trepang2 is still a damn fine first person shooter, and I recommend it to everyone who just wants to sit down, turn the brain off and shoot some bad guys in an insanely brutal fashion. Oh, and if you were waiting for a new Fear game for all those years, I think this game could fill that void for you. Thank you very much for sticking around.